Good evening. This is the Municipality of Anchorage Planning and Zoning Commission. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Dean? Here. Mr. Ferguson?
Here.
Mr. Spring?
Here.
Mr. Strike?
Here.
Ms. Barker?
Here.
Mr. Sporhays?
Here.
Commissioners Robinson, Walker, and Kange are excused this evening. Thank you.
We expect Commissioner Robinson to show up in about an hour, but he's excused for the time being on that. Ms. Dean, will you please handle the disclosures?
Commissioner Strike, do you have anything to disclose?
No disclosures. Commissioner
Ferguson, do you have anything to disclose?
In the matter of case 14-0151, the petitioner's representative is Dow HKM. My firm is in the process of negotiating an agreement between Dow and the firm I am representing. This is not related to this case at all. It is a continuation of work that Dow has been doing for about the past 2 years, but we are taking it to a slightly new level. I don't see it as a conflict. It has no issues at all related to this particular issue.
So I must ask you the standard questions. Is this a substantial part of this in the present action?
No, ma'am.
One that varies directly or substantially with the outcome?
No, ma'am.
Immediate and known or conjectural and dependent on factors beyond the body's action?
Because it does not impact this case, I'm going to say no.
Significant monetarily?
No.
Okay. I move for Jim to participate.
We have a motion by Commissioner Sporhays, a second by Commissioner Spring. Please use your machines. Yeah, I'll abstain. That motion carries, so I am directed to participate. Please continue, Ms. Dean.
Commissioner Spring, do you have anything to disclose?
No.
Commissioner Sporhays, do you have anything to disclose?
I do not.
Commissioner Barker, do you have anything to disclose?
No disclosures.
And I do cases D1A, B, and C on the resolutions for approval on the consent agenda. I will not be able to vote on those. I was not present for those actions.
Okay, thank you very much. Will you please also handle the consent agenda?
Well, I don't know if I can because
Hey,
I don't
bring
know.
it up.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. On the resolutions for approval, does anybody have any thing they would like to pull?
Seeing and hearing none, I will take that as a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second? I've got a second. Now, this is where you don't get to vote, okay? Yes. All right, please use your machines. That motion is carried. So the three items on the consent agenda, the Government Hill Neighborhood Plan, the budgets, and the 68-foot tall utility pole, the resolutions have been approved. We have no unfinished business. So the first order of action we have is case 2014-0151. This is in regards to this will have public testimony. I'd like to read the procedure for public testimony. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Commission at its meeting is, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the Chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission's rules of procedures. Petitioners, including all of his or her representatives, 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc., 5 minutes. Individuals, 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the Commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the Commission. An individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Planning and Zoning Commission takes, except Commission's recommendations to the Assembly which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the Clerk's office within 20 days after approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission of the resolution, which is the Commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing. Any individual may request written findings from any Commission decision within 7 days. In the matter of case 2014-0151, a rezone from R1A to PLI, may we have the staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a rezone of approximately 2.2 acre portion of a 9.28 acre parcel to PLI, Public Lands and Institutions District, and the remainder 7.03, approximately 7.03 acre portion to PR Parks and Recreation from the existing zoning of R1A Single Family Residential Larger Lot District. The property is located at the northeast corner of Lake Otis Parkway and DeArmond Road intersection. The property is owned by the municipality and under the management authority of the Department of Parks and Recreation. Following a positive recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission in 2012, the Assembly selected a 2.21 acre portion of the parcel to locate the new Fire Station 9. Adjoining the west property boundary, a 50-foot by approximately 400-foot right-of-way was dedicated for Lake Otis Parkway with recording of a plat in 1965. The road is constructed from DeArmond Road to the end of the dedicated right-of-way. The road does provide access to 5 dwellings and to the parking lot for the Rabbit Creek Elementary School. Vehicular access, however, to the apparatus bays of the new fire station will be from DeArmond Road. There is a parking lot that will be on the north side of the fire station, and Lake Otis Parkway will be the access to that employee-type parking and visitor parking. It should be noted there is a median in DeArmond Road that extends nearly the entire frontage of the petition site, and it will only allow right-in, right-out turns. The State of Alaska, in their return comment, Department of Transportation, in their return comments, they own the DeArmond Road, and they have indicated that there will be no changes to the median. So access to the fire station, at least at this point in time, is right-in, right-out only. This is being reviewed under the new code, and according to the approval criteria, they all appear to be met. The best interest of Anchorage is being served because there will be better coverage for the lower hillside. Approximately 700 additional households are added to the 4-minute response time, which is the standard goal to respond to an emergency situation. It reduces the overlap with other fire station service areas. It provides a better response time to Fire Station 9's area, and it also can act as a backup to Fire Station 10. There is no overlap, but they can act as a backup to Fire Station 10 in the event of a major emergency such as a wildfire. So it is in the public, the best interest of the citizens of Anchorage, at least on the hillside. The Hillside District Plan indicates this property as a park. A replat of the property will retain over 7 acres as park, which will be dedicated as Rabbit Creek Park. To date, the municipality acquired the property in 1974, and this park has never been dedicated by the Assembly as a dedicated park. The intention of Parks and Recreation, as well as the Parks and Recreation Commission, is that the remainder portion of the property be formally dedicated to parkland, which will preserve that use in perpetuity. The majority of the site will continue to serve the neighborhood as a park. The property is served by all utilities as well as all public services. Most likely, adverse impact on the neighborhood will result from noise. It is the fire department procedure to use flashing lights when exiting the station and not to turn on the sirens until the fire engines have entered major roads where traffic is heavier and both sound and visual alert systems are necessary to notify surrounding traffic. However, there will be no external speakers installed at this fire station. Vegetation is being preserved. There is a 50-foot wide extension of the park that is heavily vegetated along the east petition site boundary to buffer the adjacent subdivision. And the trees are 30 to 50 feet in height, and the buffer of varying widths is to be retained along the north and west boundaries of the fire station site. Impacts on the surrounding neighborhood will be mitigated by the configuration of the plat, retaining the 50 feet of parkland adjacent to the east property boundary. The residential scale and the building materials for the station will mitigate the impacts of the fire station on the adjoining neighborhood, and the vegetative buffer to the north, south, and east of the fire station lot should also limit or help to mitigate impacts on the adjoining residential neighborhood. The rezoning does conform to Goal 4 of the Hillside District Plan that addresses the need for public facilities to retain land to serve anticipated needs for public facilities and public use areas. And it does also meet Goal 6, which is to enhance a system of parks with the dedication of the majority of the site for Rabbit Creek Park. The rezone will not result in split lot zoning. Therefore, the department does recommend approval of the approximately 2.2 acre portion of proposed Tract 1 of a 9.28 acre parcel to PLI, and the remainder approximately 7.03 portion proposed Tract 2 to PR Parks and Recreation. And there is a lengthy meets and bounds legal description. It's located in Section 28. There is an effective clause that is recommended that the rezone shall not become effective until a final plat has been recorded for proposed Fire Station 9 subdivision tracts 1 and 2. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Spring?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that there's a median along the front, along the Armin, and that DOT won't be permitting a break there. I guess my question is, it's a couple of two parts. One, I don't understand why it's not allowed, and two, is it possible to make a U-turn around the median in order to go eastbound on the Armin? It seems like that's the only way you'll be able to serve the hillside, is to go westbound, right turn out of there, and then make a U-turn around the median to go eastbound. And I didn't see anything about whether that's possible, given the fire trucks are generally pretty large, and it could present a problem, perhaps. Was that investigated, and do we have information on if that's going to work?
Through the chair, I do not know the reasons for DOT stating that they would not consider a break in the median other than the volume of traffic. And the turning radius of a fire engine, I don't have that turning radius, but it probably has to be at least a 50-foot radius. And I'm not sure if a fire truck in an emergency situation will be able to maneuver a U-turn. And that is problematic because there was a plan that there would be, on the part of the municipality and the representative for this case, that there would be a break in the median, and they would be able to turn either east or west in the event of an emergency. I don't know if there have been further discussions with DOT, but I would have to defer to the applicant if they have further information on the issue of access.
If I could follow up just
Go ahead.
real quickly. Yeah, and I'd ask furthermore if I have an opportunity to talk to DOT, whether, what their opinion regarding the safety, whether it's safer to allow a median break there and make a left turn directly out of the parking lot, or if it's safer to require a U-turn. I mean, you still have to deal with traffic on DeArmond. It seems like, it doesn't, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't know about which would be safer, but it seems like that's an issue that should be considered. Also, one other follow-up is, you may not know this answer, but maybe the petitioner does. How does this prohibition of the median break impact the site plan? Does it create any changes in what was anticipated?
Through the chair, Mr. Spring, as far as I know, the site plan has been submitted for review during the December public hearing scheduled for scheduled before the UDC on the 10th. I'd have to defer to the petitioner or the petitioner's representative to determine whether there was any change to the site plan. As the median appears to extend almost the entire width, and there is a choice not to use Lake Otis Parkway because all the bays face DeArmond Road, they have to exit onto DeArmond Road. So I understand the concern. That was the concern of the reviewing agency, the traffic engineering, and it may be subject to future resolution, but I don't have any information on that as today.
Are you finished, Mr. Strike? Or Mr. Spring, Mr. Strike?
I have the same concerns that Commissioner Spring has raised. Right turn only, right in, right out. If you go down DeArmond down to the Old Seward Highway, they're going to take a left or a right onto the Old Seward Highway. There's still no room to turn. Otherwise, we're going onto the frontage road back down to Huffman, which is right back to the fire station that we're trying to replace. To turn all the way to come back if we're to respond to a incident in the upper hillside on the DeArmond Road area. With that said, so I have the same concern, so I'm hoping the petitioner's representative may be able to elaborate on that item. The other item is we're here for a public meeting today, yet we've already started work. So where's the question in that? The question is now, has work started on this site?
Clearing has started on the site, and I understand it's being done under permit, but again, I refer to the petitioner on that issue.
So the rhetorical question I have out there is, what message are we sending to the public? Come in and testify, but we've already started the work. From a citizen standpoint, if I were out in the audience, I'd be upset. Why am I coming here to testify if you've already begun the work?
Through the chair, Mr. Strike, but the Assembly has already approved this site, and I understand that the neighbors were advised that clearing would be starting before it was started. So it's not as though the site won't be used for the fire station because the Assembly has already approved the site selection.
Thank you.
I have got a couple questions. The site may be selected. The site plan has not yet been approved. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, no, it hasn't been approved. It's going before the UDC on December 10th.
Okay. And yet, back to Mr. Strike's point, we've started. Question 2, this site has been sold on the theory that it provides for coverage to 700 more houses in 4 minutes. I don't think that includes a U-turn with a fire truck. Do you know if the coverage has taken into account the U-turn?
Mr. Chair, probably not, because they
you very much.
were not aware that there would not be a break in the median when they were planning for this. So
Do we have a representative from DOTPF tonight to explain this?
no, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions for staff? The public testimony is now open. Oops, nope. The petitioner now has their time to come forward.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Ritter. I'm with Dow HKM. With me this evening is Rory Roundtree. He is the design architect and project manager of the project, as well as two representatives from Public Works that are also in the audience to answer any questions. As Margaret noticed or discussed, the site did go through a site selection process. There were a lot of different community council meetings that took place during that process, both with the old Seward Ocean View Community Council, which the existing fire station sits in, as well as with Huffman, O'Malley, and Rabbit Creek Community Councils. The selected site sits on the boundary of those two community councils. The community had concerns about the site. Those concerns were addressed through conditions of approval that carried through the Parks and Rec approval to transfer 2.5 acres, as well as through the recommendation from approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and also carried through into the ordinance that was approved by the Assembly. One of the things that was noted during the site selection process is that the site was zoned R1A and not PLI, that, had been referenced on tax IDs. It was also determined that while everybody does enjoy this site as a park, it was not part, other than being part of the park inventory, it was not designated or zoned for park, which is why part of this rezone is dedicating that. I would just like to clarify on the size. It's been noted that the plat is for over 2 acres, which is a true statement. It's also referenced in the rezone application, but also in the replat application, that there is an anticipated 30 to 33 foot right-of-way dedication that's going to be required off of Lake Otis. Once those right-of-way dedications, as well as other easements, are taken, the site will actually be under 2 acres. It's also on note that if those dedications are not put forward, that the plat will be adjusted to reduce its size so that it is under the 2 acres, as per the condition of approval of the Assembly ordinance and all the other ordinances noted. In regard to the DOT comment, when we set out, we knew that DOT had issue. When we set out with the site selection process, they had indicated that they had issues with the median. They did not say they would not put a break in the median. When we started out with our different sites, and if you turn to page 52 of your staff packet, you'll have a site plan. We originally had the driveway kind of in the middle. So there's along DeArmond, as Ms. O'Brien noted, we were trying to keep a pretty good separation from the neighbor to the east, as well as avoiding a utility box that sits along the sidewalk on DeArmond.
Which page number?
52. So we had trying to keep a 50-foot distance and stay between that utility box. We had the driveway pushed, which we thought would be the minimum disruption to the median. I guess before that, we had it on the other side of the red box. So it would be to the left of that, if you're looking at page 52. And DOT basically came back and said that's a non-starter. So we moved the driveway to the right of that utility box, still trying to keep the distance and the buffer preferred by the neighbor. DOT said that's much better. And then we had a pre-application with the Muni, and DOT had a representative there that said, you can't move that median. So you'll only be able to do a right in, right out. So the following day, we met with DOT, And they said, if we can push the driveway as far to the east as possible, we can make a left-hand turn out of there. Well, we reworked the site plan, and it wasn't pretty. It was a lot of concrete and a lot of jagging, and the fire truck still could not get a good, clean turn out of there. We had the same concerns you did, Mr. Spring, about people doing illegal U-turns or worse, going against traffic. And we were making the neighbor unhappy because we were getting right up against the property line. So right now, we're in negotiations with DOT to move the driveway back to where you're seeing it on your site plan, but then also having an entrance, a second entrance off of the site onto Lake Otis so that they can do a left-hand turn out of there, which will not have the impact on the response time. Because we're waiting for DOT to approve that before we formally submit it and augment our major site plan review. I also want to say that under the R1A zoning district, the fire station is an allowed use. But we were just including this in the rezone so that way in the future, if the fire station decided to relocate in 20, 30 years that needs a different home, that the site was protected with the PLI zoning and that it wasn't R1A. To answer your question, yes, they did start clearing. We had been in communication with the community council about it. Actually, 2 members walked the site. I think they went through 2 rolls of clearing tape, making sure they were tagging the appropriate buffer and keeping the trees, the appropriate trees and vegetation remain. While I recognize that the site plan still has to go through an approval process, this is a very tight site, and it's very unlikely that that building footprint is going to change. But we do appreciate the concern of the community and of the commission that clearing has begun. And with that, I'd like to save the remainder of my time for rebuttal.
You have about 3 minutes and 50 seconds left.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Spring.
Well, thanks for clarifying the site plan. So there's going to be a change probably.
Yes.
And it sounds like the key, if you can't get the median break, is to use Lake Otis as an access point, where there is a median break because there's a school that accesses off of there. But is that going to be a problem for accessing it? Like, for instance, if there's traffic queued up on Lake Otis and then suddenly the fire trucks wants to exit onto there and they get blocked in a little bit?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So the access on DeArmond will remain. The access onto Lake Otis will be an emergency access only. And so if there's an instance, because we recognize that there's going to be 2 times in a day where there's a potential for conflict, when school lets in and when school gets out. So that, if in the event that they can't do a left-hand turn without disturbing, there's a queue of traffic, they would be able to exit off of DeArmond. And I would like to note that we've looked at the call histories and where they're coming from, and most of the calls do go to the west, so they are typically turning right out of that site, would be typically turning right out of that site.
Interesting. Just one follow-up question.
Go ahead.
And just, so if they are going eastbound up Hillside, it would be nice to have, maybe for future, if there ever is another one, to have some type of response area put in map so we can tell where the responses might end up going, but that would have been helpful. But how do you anticipate then fire trucks responding to a call up on the hillside? Is it going to be a U-turn around the median, going around westbound on DeArmond and then U-turning to go eastbound, or is there another way you had anticipated?
No, they'll exit Lake Otis and go to the light and then turn left.
Okay, but if they can't, you see that's emergency, okay.
Right, so if they were responding to an emergency call.
Oh.
They just can't. Personnel, I'm sorry, I should clarify. There's a driveway to the north that will remain. That's for personnel. Yeah. But no, there would be no other use. So people, if they're coming to the site, they're not going to be using that southern driveway. That's only for emergency response, leaving the site.
Okay, so so if there's a response up on the hillside, they will go through the emergency exit, and if there's traffic, we we hope there isn't traffic, and if they are, they just have to get out of the way. And
Correct.
they'll have a way out without having to make a U-turn. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Strike?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the clarity. You mentioned a light. I don't believe there's a light currently at Lake Otis and DeArmond, though.
Is there? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Thank you for the clarification.
And with the increased use of Lake Otis, are there any plans to upgrade Lake Otis? It is a rural lane-and-a-half road as is, heavily used during school functions. Parents park all the way out to DeArmond at school functions because of the tightness of their own parking. How might this conflict?
We don't anticipate there being much of a conflict. There's 7 personnel per shift, and there's 2 shifts, so 14 personnel total. So you'll have 7 personnel that are arriving to the site. The biggest time of conflict is going to be when you have a shift leaving and one coming on. So there's enough parking for all 14. So maybe like within an hour span, you may have 7 guys coming to the site and then 7 guys leaving the site. And then there's typically between 0 and 5 calls on average from the site, so maybe 5 emergency responses. So we're not anticipating a large traffic overload. And they've also considered working with the school to adjust the times that they change shift so that it doesn't conflict with the school hours.
And with school functions, might it be considered that the parking lot, since there's only 7 personnel, be opened up to school function persons?
I would have to defer to Public Works before I commit to them to that.
Okay.
I have a question. Talked about emergency traffic going out Lake Otis. Most of the traffic going out is emergency traffic, okay? I don't know why we have to sit around and kowtow to the DOTPF. Why we can't just say, we want a median break. How do we make that work?
We've been asking the same question. The Community Council has been asking us that question. DOT was relentless in saying no. They've put it there. And
Say why no?
what it really seemed to come down to was an issue of liability. If they make a
It's
modification,
a bunch of baloney.
would you please come to our next meeting with us?
I talked to DOT before, lights on Golden View and other place. Part of our job is to help balance the demands of the various groups. And this, unfortunately, is not in quite the right niche, but I think it's our job to sit here and say, the community wants the best access we can out of this station, okay? And the best access, does anybody object the best access is through a median break on the DeArmond? And almost every other fire station, Tudor included, well, the Tudor they've changed now, but I mean, we should have it. And look at the fire station on Huffman. I mean, they came across the median there, and Huffman, where that station existing 9 is, was a lot tougher. So I don't buy DOT wins. And I don't know maybe how we're going to have to force it, but it doesn't, I mean, we are here to look at best for the community.
Because DOT gave us a workable solution in that, if we wanted to move the driveway as far to the east as we could have a left turn. While I say the best solution possible, it still wasn't great because, 1, it created a lot more development footprint, and 2, it wasn't a clean left turn out of there. There was quite a bit of jogging that needed to be done. However, and it also, it disturbed one of the neighbors. I mean, it brought the development much closer to them. But we did tell the Community Council that we would support them in any way that we could if they wanted to go to their legislature and try to work with DOT. So we are well open to working to get DOT to change their mind on that.
All right, let the record show that Commissioner Robinson has showed up. Commissioner Spring, back to you.
Well, Just one follow-up. It seems like it just dawned on me, one of the reasons why maybe DOT said they wouldn't allow a median break is because of its proximity to Lake Otis. And it sounds like, because they wanted to push it to the east to separate, maintain some separation distance. So it sounds like the main problem is that conflicting turning movements of two driveways very close together would cause some safety problems.
That and the speed of traffic. It wasn't so much the volume of traffic, but more the speed of traffic, and they felt that drivers not paying attention would need a little bit more of a queuing area to come to that stop.
You're a little young for this, but I keep having pictures of the Keystone Cops and their paddy wagon making U-turns and the people hanging off the back of the ladder. Commissioner Dean.
Through the chair, is there any possibility of flipping the fire station 180 degrees and having the access for the fire trucks out onto Lake Otis and then using that turn lane?
I know, have you tried that? I think that I'm going to have the designer speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Roy Roundtree. I'm the architect on this project. We did talk to the fire department quite a bit about where the best response would be. And like Michelle said earlier, the majority of their calls go west. And they would really like fire access to go out onto the major arterial rather than impacting smaller subdivision streets. And that's what they'd like that response to go straight out to DeArmond. Just to improve the response time.
But wouldn't that solve the problem with DOT, and wouldn't that save amazing amounts of money and hassle by just flipping the building around?
Well, I don't think Lake Otis, as you mentioned in the staff report, Lake Otis is not a greatly improved roadway.
Right, it's not improved enough, probably.
And we're trying not to impact that road with heavy fire vehicles.
The weight of the vehicles is probably more than the road can handle and all the other things that go along with it. Yeah. Thank you.
But we're putting them out there on the emergency driveway and not having a concern about it. Do we have any more questions for the petitioner? Thank you very much. You've got 3.5 minutes. Or 3 minutes, 48 seconds, pardon me.
Thank you.
We're now open for public testimony. If you want to testify, please come forward. State your name and spell it. Come on forward. As more speakers, the price goes up, too.
Okay,
So,
I mean, I have a hearing loss, so I didn't hear everything that was said. My name is Kathy Keck. My last name is spelled K-E-C-K. I live right across the street from Rabbit Creek Park, and I personally mostly wanted to say I was very, very upset to come home last week and discover on Friday that they had basically clear-cut the park. And despite whatever your staff said, nobody told us that there was going to be work on this before they had these series of public hearings. I mean, we've gotten 3 notices in the past month about public hearing and asking for public input, and it really is kind of a farce if they're already doing the work to ask us to come and give our opinions. Now, personally, I think the idea of having a fire truck go down Lake Otis is crazy, especially during school, because, I mean, you can talk about school functions. It's not just school functions. Like I said, we live right across the street every day at 3:30. It's a zoo. It's a zoo at 9 when parents come and drop their kids off. It's going to be crazy. Traffic is bad coming down to Yarmouth from south as well, and I just think that you might be better off thinking about myself, frankly. But that's my big thing was I really do think it was kind of a I was surprised to see the park being clear-cut.
do we have any questions for Ms. Keck? Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony. Hey, you've come out, you've missed the baseball game. Come up and testify, you might get the second half.
How you doing, folks? My only heartburn over this whole
Give
thing,
us your name.
you know, my name's Dan Wyant. I live right there on the corner.
Can you spell your last name, Dave?
Wyant, W-Y-A-N-T. Y-A-N-T.
Go
Anyway,
ahead, please.
anyway, the only heartburn I've got is of course, I was informed from Tony there, the fire chief on Huffman. He said that they are going to make the access on Lake Otis, which I'm right on the corner, and of course their access for Lake Otis is going to come anyway. So, however, their lights are going to be on in my bedroom. Anyway, and of course we don't have curtains because we kind of have a little bit of a treat area, you know. So it'd be kind of a little bit of annoying, you know. And it'd be greater if they would be able to, because I thought first off they were going to move it out to DeArmond. You know, that was the first thought. Well, then I guess the state said, hey, that ain't going to happen. You know, so realistically, to pull out there, it kind of, to me, it's going to be a really traffic disaster.
Pull out from the station or from Lake Otis?
What's that? I'm a deaf guy.
Pull out from the station or from Lake Otis?
It'd be better to pull out on DeArmond and not Lake Otis.
Thank
you. You know, because it's directly between, well, my neighbors right there, Greg, and anyway, they, so the driveway's right there, and I think it'd be really cumbersome, you know, and but you know, it is what it is. You know, so anyway, I just wanted, and the thing is the light problem, you know, anyway, so there it is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you're going to testify, if you move down, it makes it go a little bit quicker.
My name's Greg Zacharias, Zacharias.
Thank you.
Any access off of Lake Otis for that? I mean, during school hours, as they've said already, when it's coming and going, is full of cars. I mean, many times they are backed all the way up to DeArmond. And any school functions, everyone just parks along the road and leaves their cars. Then there would be no way for the fire trucks to get around the cars. They wouldn't be able to have them moved. They wouldn't be able to get out of there. And oftentimes there's people parking in my driveway for school functions. So it's very traffic heavy through there for anything to do with school. So any access off Lake Otis. And with cars parked on the side of Lake Otis, there wouldn't be room really even for a fire truck to drive down it straight, much less try to make a left turn out of there.
Hang on 1 second. Commissioner Voorhees?
Could you just identify exactly where your driveway is in relation to the development?
It's the second driveway on Lake Otis, heading towards the school to the north.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone who wishes to testify? Anyone at all? Going once, going twice. The public testimony for case 2014-0151 is closed. The petitioner has 3.5 minutes of rebuttal. 3.48 minutes. 3 minutes and 48 seconds. I keep getting it wrong.
I'll try to make it quick. Just in response to the comments that we heard, we had been working with, we have 2 members of the community council who have been kind of part of our team. We've been pulling them in. They were actually part of the team selection committee, and then they have been brought in during kind of key points of any design changes and have kind of acted as the liaison between the design team and the neighborhood. So we do feel like we did an extraordinary job of really trying to reach out to the neighbors, walking, doing site walks with them to kind of help flag and getting the word out. So I do apologize to anybody who doesn't feel like they were really noticed of kind of some of these schedules. As far as the exit onto Lake Otis, I just wanted to note that, if the Lake Otis was blocked, the fire station would still be able to leave off of DeArmond. And there may be a possibility, because it's such a short distance between DeArmond and Lake Otis, that we could put no parking and no blocking signs to ensure that we don't run into that conflict of not being able to get out of there. And also looking at the aerial that the site design is on page 52, I think that the way we have the driveway, the second driveway, the southern one on Lake Otis, that it will be just low enough that any lights from the headlights that come out will hopefully avoid Mr. Went's house. So we will do our best to design this to mitigate the concerns as much as possible. And with that, I close my hearing.
Commissioner Strike?
Yeah. If you could refer back, you've referred back to page 52 a couple of times. And if we look at page 52, show me how the fire trucks will exit out Lake Otis.
Is Elmo working, or can I walk up?
Is Elmo working?
Do you want me to take up yours?
Based on the diagram on page 52.
Elmo should be on the screen for the public. Michelle, is there a light there? There. No, go, yeah, there. Well, a little more. There.
I think it might be hard to see, but you can kind of see where we've drawn in right here at this curb cut.
So your page 52 is different than mine.
No.
Well, that was just hand drawn on.
This is hand drawn on.
Yeah, the driveway is hand drawn on. So we have,
We don't see that here.
Yeah.
no. And that's what, so we were waiting DOT to approve our current location before we augmented and changed the site plan.
Waiting for DOT to approve
The new driveway location on DeArmond.
Lake Otis.
Well, Lake Otis, and then also where we have shifted it on DeArmond.
But to be clear, we don't need DOT permission for that access on Lake Otis.
Correct, that is an MOA road.
Yeah, get free driveway. Are you done, Commissioner Strike? Commissioner Voorhees?
Can you, on this, can you see, this might be better to see from Mr. Strike? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The first part was the same concern that Mr. Strike had, because I was kind of confused on that. Second, it's more just a comment. I'm not sure of the technical term, but maybe in your packet in the future you could provide the aerial that shows traffic directions and medians, since we're going to be looking at access in and out. Thank you.
That's the second commissioner that made the same request. Okay.
Noted.
Okay. Anybody have any further questions for the petitioners? On that one. Mr. Robinson, you were here for the public testimony, I believe. So I believe that you would be allowed to partake in the voting. Does anyone object to Mr. Robinson participating in the voting? He was here for the public testimony. Anyone at all? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for making it also, sir. Okay. Thank you very much, Michelle. What is the wish of the body on case 2014-0151? Commissioner Strike.
I will give this a stab here. In regards to case 2014-0151, the petition to rezone the 2.21 acre portion of the 9.28 acres, I move for approval as submitted pursuant to the staff's recommendations. The comment I make is that this is a rezoning pursuit followed by a platting, and the rezoning is consistent with the area requirements, the usage of the land, and so forth. My only caveat to this is that the access issues are still to be developed and identified, But that's not before us here. This is a rezoning issue. So in that regard, I move for that approval.
Commissioner Dean? You seconded.
I did. And the rezone is necessary, if nothing else, to create the park, that everybody needs to have a dedicated park. It's been R1A, I believe, for a long time. It would be nice to resolve that issue at least so that people have the knowledge that they aren't going to lose their park to something else.
Does anyone else have anything they would like to add? Anyone at all? Would you please use your, whoops. Commissioner Spring.
As fast as it
Don't
used
vote.
to be.
Yeah, Commissioner Spring.
Well, I think somebody has a comment on the record. Frustration, I think we all feel.
We'll get the
regarding-
findings. You can make,
Oh, okay. Well, it's not a finding because I'm not. Is it if we approve it?
well, I think we can express our frustration with a finding. I think there may be a race to see who gets to make that finding. Okay. May we please use our machines to vote? Okay. Case 2014-0151 is approved. Now, Commissioner Strike, it was your motion. Would you like to cover findings, or would you like to let others?
Well, I'll take a start at this, and that is this zoning is consistent. It is needed. This site was identified in 2012. It does meet the community council's desires. It meets the Lower Hillside requirements. It meets it's consistent with the zoning district and purpose, and just as the staff has spelled out. And so that's consistent. The consistency, again, further, is the frustration we see in a portion of this process. Timing is everything. Appearance is everything. I think we've had some of the participants who testified have left. When the public comes forth to testify, they're taking time out of their time and day. And so this clearing started yesterday. It's an appearance. It could have waited till tomorrow. But the optics of this is so frustrating if you're sitting in that audience that it makes them wonder why we show up, why we participate in this process. And that's something I don't want to see the audience frustrated with. But we as the city and the management and so forth, we can control that. So the optics is something that we need to work on. Because after being here in a year, we do a shitty job about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Spring. Or Strike. Commissioner Dean, and then Commissioner Spring. Okay, you second. Commissioner Spring.
Well, I think the frustration that most people in the audience were trying to express was the fact that DOT came in at a late hour and announced that there would be no median break. There's ample opportunity to make that comment way before this rezoning came into effect. I mean, it came to us, and it should have been probably investigated and nailed down during the site plan review. I mean, that's a pretty key issue with selecting a fire station is access to and from it. So they should have had that down before it got to us. And, you know, DOT's got to be put to the task, I think, to make those answers early in the process and stick with them. If they, I don't know what, whether or not they changed their mind or their comment got lost in the mail or something, but for some reason it wasn't pursued adequately enough, early enough in the process so that we knew what the answer was. And now everybody's frustrated because they put a lot of time into this project, reviewing site plans and access, and now at the last minute it turns out that the DOT doesn't want to allow it. when everybody thought they would allow it earlier. So, you know, they got to get it together, I guess. That's what I'm saying.
I'm disappointed in DOT's lack of responsibility to the community. This is an emergency facility, and it should be treated as such, and they should take the necessary steps to allow for the most prompt response to the fire trucks. Period. End of sentence. Anybody else got anything else? Thank you very much. That completes case 2014-0151. Next case is 2014-0160. The menu board case for the lack of a better description. Do we have a staff report on the menu boards?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This proposed ordinance amends the new Title 21 to make the following changes: provide standards for menu boards and ordering screens, and to remove the provisions for sign architectural features and to increase the allowed sign area. The attached ordinance amends the new Title 21 sign regulations, removes language related to architectural features and the associated tables. As amended, the tables are shown in Exhibit A. These amendments increase the allowed sign area by 10% to compensate for the removal of the provisions for the signs. The increased area allows for a sign to incorporate architectural features in the design if desired, while limiting the overall size of the sign. This also allows and regulates menu boards in certain districts as well, as amending the definitions for menu boards and ordering screens. A little background, the provisions regarding sign architectural features are not clearly defined and have led to inconsistent determinations over time. But an interesting note here, currently there are no provisions for menu boards or ordering screens for drive-through restaurants in the sign regulations. As drive-through restaurants require ordering screens and menu boards, this ordinance will allow and regulate the menu board sizes at restaurants. The provisions of menu board sizes are from the Unified Sign Code. With that being said, the Planning Division recommends the approval of the draft ordinance with the condition found on page 2 of the staff packet that clarifies drive-through lanes, replaces it with queuing lane. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the staff on this item? Well, talk about, oh yes we do. Commissioner Spring.
Yeah, just real quick, on page 7, I don't know if it's oversight or typo. You mentioned that you, by eliminating the architectural features, you're adding 10% to the sign area. On page 7, under the table 21.11-3, you have districts PLI, WS, and PR, and then you have RO separately. How come the RO maximum area wasn't increased?
Through the chair, Mr. Spring, I think that was an oversight.
Okay.
Can we reach an agreement to change that to 88 square feet? And as we go forward, we'll pick that up. Commissioner Dean.
Through the chair, my question to staff is, it says on page 3, the third to last sentence says, the total area is utilized for business identification. You mean like only 20% of the sign can say this is Burger King or whatever it may be? Is that what you guys are trying to say? I'm not totally understanding.
Through the chair, Ms. Yeah, that is correct, Ms. Dean.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions for staff? Do we have any public testimony on this issue, 2014-0160? Any public testimony? Anybody want to testify? Raise your hand. Yeah. Seeing and hearing no testimony. Going once. Going twice. The public testimony is now closed. Anyone? What's the wish of the body on case 21-14-0160? Commissioner Strike.
2 for 2 here. In the matter of 2014-0160, I move for approval as presented by staff with their recommendations.
And that also specifically includes the change on table 2111-3 under RO to 88 square feet?
Correct.
Thank you very much. We have a second. Brandon Sporhees. Mr. Spring, you're in the queue. Mr. Spring.
I might have missed something. Do you also include the recommendation, number 1, under that? Staff recommendation for that change?
All recommendations. All recommendations from the staff.
Do we have any further discussions? Any further discussions at all? Please use your machines. That motion carries. The motion is approved. Hey, Brandon, he's voted on mine. Okay, all right. Next case is 2014-0161. Provide variance authority for various sections of the code and to move standards from the plan unit development from Chapter 3 to Chapter 7. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an amendment to Title 21 to establish variance authority for various sections of code, to make changes to the variance section for clarity, and to move standards for plan unit developments from Chapter 3 to Chapter 7. I'll briefly outline the changes section by section. Section 1 identifies decision-making and review responsibilities for variances in Table 2102-1, Summary of Major Title 21 Decision-Making and Review Responsibilities. Sections 2, 3, and 4 clarify the decision-making authority of the Urban Design Commission, Plating Board, and the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals. Section 5 moves business industrial park plan unit developments from its current location in 2103-080G to a new section 2107-115A within a new section 2107-115 titled Non-Residential Development. This change also involves adding an additional sentence, a BIP-PUD shall be processed as a conditional use in accordance with Section 2103-080. Section 6 moves residential plan unit development from Section 2103-080H to Section 2107-1101 with the additional sentence, a residential PUD shall be processed as a conditional use in accordance with Section 2103-080. An additional sentence references the location of the conditional use approval criteria. Section 7, read letters Section 2103-080I to Section 2103-080G. And finally, Section 8 amends the variance section of Chapter 2103 to identify the correct decision-making body and also to reorganize the language to make the section more readable. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for staff? Do we have any? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Dean. Ms. Dean.
Through the chair, my question of staff is on page 14, and it says in the event that CBERRSA Board of Supervisors has additional comments, they will be forwarded. None were forwarded, I take it?
Through the chair, Ms. Dean, no additional comments were forwarded.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff on this issue? Any public?
Sorry, late again. I just
You're as bad as Walker. Commissioner Sprague.
Everything's been slow today. Could you please comment on Tom Davis's comment and how you responded to that? It involves. I'm not sure I quite understand the concern, but I see there's he took time to write something, a comment, and I wasn't sure how you plan to address it.
Through the chair, Mr. Spring, I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure that I understand Mr. Davis's question, but the ability to do a planned unit development is not changed in the slightest. It's, well, except for the fact that now one can request a variance from a certain provision of a planned unit development, which can be requested under the current code, the old code. So moving the location of the standards from Chapter 3 to Chapter 7 has no bearing on how it would be processed and what other sections of code it would apply. A planned unit development allows you to propose different standards of code. So in some sense, you get to adjust the underlying district, certain elements of the underlying district, some of the dimensional standards. And that would happen whether it remain in Chapter 3 or move to Chapter 7. It happens through the conditional use process. It comes to this body for review and approval.
Does that answer your question?
I appreciate the attempt to clarify that.
Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. It seems to be basically a housekeeping effort. I'm just wondering how the need surfaced or need was recognized to make these changes. Where did it come from?
Through the chair, Ms. Barker, the initial problem kind of surfaced because Chapter 10 of the new code was developed by a community body, the Chuyak Eagle River Consortium, and not planning staff. And so it kind of went forward in its own little track to the Assembly, and it wasn't until after it had been attached to the rest of Title 21 that we kind of realized, well, wait a second, we have this hole where we didn't accommodate, they weren't really, the consortium wasn't looking for the ties to the rest of the chapters, and the staff didn't really have, all that rushing at the end when the code was being adopted. We didn't really have the time to make those ties. So we noticed them soon after the entire code was adopted in February of 2013. And we did try to, and then we also noticed that there were some problems with Chapter 9, the Girdwood section, and we did try to have them corrected through a large omnibus ordinance that did go forward in early, I think it was January 2014, and it was just a lot of minor corrections. It didn't come to this body. We took it straight to the Assembly, but it was determined by the legal department that this was too substantive a change to go in with that big omnibus, so they pulled that part out, and then we just got really busy with other things and didn't kind of catch up and fix this right away, so it kind of ended up on the back burner.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Any further questions for staff? Do we have any public testimony? Any public testimony at all? Anyone wish to testify? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Public testimony is now closed on case 2014-0161. What is the wish of the body? Commissioner Spring.
In the matter of case 2014-0161, amendment to Title 21 to establish variance authority and make changes to the variance section for clarity and move standards for planning unit developments from Chapter 3 to Chapter 7. Recommend approval to the Assembly with the minor edits as recommended by staff on page 9 of the report.
We have a second. Any discussion on this, on Mr. Spring's motion? Any discussion at all? Please use your machines. That motion carries. That completes our agenda. I have 2 housekeeping issues. One of them just left my mind. The director's lunch for December is canceled. And I do not remember what the second point was. With no other business before us, I'll take a motion to adjourn, except Ms. McConnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at your December calendar, I also wanted to let you know, I was going to mention about the director's meeting, and I wanted to let you know that based on our conversation about how full the meeting agenda is on the 8th, I think people who were not at the last director's meeting didn't know that the last two cases, which are ordinance amendments, we've moved to January, and we are still working on transferring at least one other case to a different meeting. So we'll update you on that.
South Anchorage High is coming up December 8th, and we're trying to clear the decks because I would expect a more active public participation that night. Nothing other than it was coming up. No particulars at all. Ms. Barker, is your motion to adjourn?
Indeed it is.
I need a second. Mr. Robinson, thank you very much. I was worried about you down there at the end. I have a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned. Good evening and thank you, everyone. Oh, I know what it was. Ms. McConnell, I would like to recognize staff. We have zero, nada outstanding resolutions before us. And I think we've been very hard on staff, but you are totally current, and we appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, I very much appreciate that you have stated that, and it's a little embarrassing because that's true from the starting point that you started making us track them, but there will be one from before that coming to you soon. So
I can still say it's still a lot better than it was, and we appreciate your efforts.
thank you.
And please convey that to the staff that's done the job.